Boom. Billy Tucci, my friend. How you doing, brother?
Teen sensation Billy Tucci is doing just fine. How are you doing, Nile? How are you holding up in the quarantine time? Are you having a quarantini like me?
No quarantini, just seltzertini.
Well, there you go. Oh, crazy day, crazy week, huh? Crazy.
Very crazy week. Are you getting an echo, Billy?
I am not getting an echo. You have an echo on me? I hear that. What's that?
Yeah, you hear that?
I did hear that. But you don't hear me echoing, right?
Oh, do you have your window open, Billy?
Wait a minute.
I'm going to shoot you.
So?
I'm going to shoot you if you do.
No, I got a WeTransfer open. I have Chris's website. Oh, what's this? No, that's the Facebook. This is the email, the Mac mail. Hang on. No. I don't. You still here? Well, we got our guest waiting.
Yes, yes.
Do you? I can lower my maybe because I was
There
listening.
we go. Everyone, welcome to Crowd. What did he do? Oh my God, Chris, how are you, my friend?
Now that's an intro.
That is an intro. That is an intro indeed.
Thank you.
So it must have been something on his end. He closed out and it went away.
Okay.
And now we're back. Billy, how we doing, butter?
Down there.
He's good.
That's-
He's good.
that's
Yeah,
all
he's
down
down
there.
there.
Why
He's
isn't
down
Chris
there.
in the center? Hello, Chris. Good to see you from Comic Tropes.
There you go.
Yeah, let's make him front and center. We should even put him on the top. And we're
This
on the
is
bottom.
quite an entertaining intro. I don't know what you had, Billy, but when you left, it went away.
Well, you kicked me out, right?
No, you did on your own. But
No,
we're,
'cause
you know what? But hey,
hang on, it's not your fault. Anyways,
it's not your fault, you boomer. But anyways, let's get right into the nitty gritty. Chris Piers from Comic Tropes is with us tonight.
Thanks
Yes.
for having me.
Very excited to have you on. Billy actually discovered your show a few months back and was like, hey, Nile, you got to check this show out. It's awesome. It's entertaining, informational. A couple times he's like, man, he really ripped that guy. But but
nice though. He does it nice.
Nice.
He's very honest and like I don't know. It's great analysis for those of you who do not know. It's an amazing, tremendous YouTube channel, Comic Tropes. You've got 113,000 subscribers, my friend.
Really?
Yes.
I've made a point to myself to not check too often. I knew that I crossed 100,000. I don't know what it is as of today, but that's great. That's great. Thank you to everybody that's watching, and thank you guys for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. How long have you? When did you start Comic Tropes?
Let's see. I'd been thinking that it was just over 3 years, but the more I'm thinking of it now, I think I started in May, so we're coming up on May, so it's coming up on 4 years.
Wow,
coming up on 4 years.
And you're a pioneer. No one was really doing shows like that.
Maybe not exactly like I was doing. I think that there was some that were more like, there's definitely a lot of comic book channels out there. And some of them are sort of more sarcastic, making jokes about comics. And some of them are maybe just sort of describing exactly what happens in stories. But I wanted to do a little bit more of an analysis of people's techniques and then sometimes talk about comic book history. And every once in a while, look at topics that don't get discussed as much, like maybe lettering or distribution, things like that.
Very
so
cool.
Can you tell us, sorry, no.
Go ahead, Billy.
Can you tell us about yourself? Tell us about yourself. That's good, Chris. That was good. Could you?
There's a story of a guy named Chris.
No, what were you saying?
Chris, can you tell us about yourself? How did you get started? How did you end up coming to Comic Tropes? Great name. Where did you come up with the name? Tell us about your upbringing and all. And
that's a lot. Let's see. I mean, my background is I've always sort of been a little bit adjacent to comics, but I've loved comics since I was, a really young teenager. I've been reading them forever. It's just my favorite medium. I feel like it can do so much. And and I'll dabble here and there, like in comics, doing like a little bit of freelance illustration or proofreading and things like that. But the story of creating the channel is a little depressing, to be honest. I had been laid off, and I was facing some severe depression. Like I already suffer from depression. I've told my audience this here and there. And I knew that I needed a project right away because it was probably going to take me a little while to line up my next job. I wasn't expecting to be downsized. So I was like, you know what? I've always loved comics. I've always loved talking about comics. I know that I can make this happen. And I didn't really necessarily care too much initially about how big an audience was I making. It was definitely for me. It was like, let me just write down some of my thoughts about various like artists or runs that I care about, and we'll just take it from there. So it came from a kind of a dark place, but it's been a really productive project for me personally.
Nice. Now, let me ask you a question. With like each show that you're doing, because I watch your shows, you get very detailed. There's a lot of facts you have to put together. I mean, what does it take to put an episode together for you?
I'm kind of always at like working on several episodes at different stages. And some of that just includes reading comics, maybe things that people have been talking about or things that all of a sudden I remember, hey, I think I like this for some reason, or I didn't like this for some reason. So I'm always sort of like reading comics. And then once I decide that I'm going to do something as a topic, yeah, it involves pulling a lot of research, like pulling up old interviews. And fortunately, we are in a time where a lot of stuff is online, but a lot of it isn't. So a lot of times, like, I'm not just buying old comics. I'm buying old things like Comics Journal or things like that. A wizard maybe just for like the interview portion with a certain creator. So it's just trying to get as much firsthand sources as I can. Mm-hmm. I know I don't do it perfectly, but I do the best I can to like pull as much research as possible and then try to distill it into like, then it's like you have to find an angle, find the through line that you can like guide somebody through the history, not just chronologically, but like sort of find like what kind of an argument are you trying to make with the information.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Because you have incredible production values. I mean, do you have a team? I mean,
no, it's just me.
Well.
It's just me. I mean, every once in a while, I can convince my fiance to maybe help me hold a camera or something like that, but that's about it.
Now, how did you construct the robot?
Oh, the Infotron robot?
Yeah.
Infotron robot.
He's like over in the corner there in my studio, but cardboard. It's just cardboard.
In that, or is it just like animated? What do you...
I found like a cylinder. I found like this cardboard hard cylinder, and I was looking at it, and I go, if I chop that up, that'll make like a good 1950s robot style head. So that was the basis, and then it's just boxes, and I think like duct tubes that I use for like the arms, and then put in a little Pringles can plastic lids for his eyes, colored red.
And he shoots lasers.
I intentionally do not try to have huge production values because it is just me. It's just YouTube. But yeah, I look, a lot of this stuff I do to entertain myself.
Yeah. No, but your Jim Shooter episode, the one that you just is your most current episode right now on the channel, it was a phenomenal episode. I mean, just the information on point, just talking about everything that guy's gone through, the ups and downs. And I mean, you really, you nailed it. You nailed it on the head.
There's so much to say about him, though. There's so much to say. Like, that could have easily been another 2 or 3 episodes. And maybe it will be someday. There's some people in the industry who've just really had tremendous ups and downs with their luck and their fortunes. And Jim Shooter's one. And I'll tell you, I've had other episodes that maybe have gotten watched more, and maybe episodes that have gotten commented on more, but I've never had an episode that has as divisive opinions. Like some people telling me that like Jim Shooter is what Marvel needs today, and other people just saying like this guy's a jerk. And I don't know if you swear on this show, so I just censored.
You can swear.
Okay, but anyway, a lot of diverse opinions on that guy.
Yeah, he's always. I've had the the privilege of spending a lot of time with Jim, do dinners, do a couple of free comic book days with him, travel from 2 or 3 shows that we did. And because I was terrified of him when I first met him, because he's so big.
He's really tall, right?
Jim Shooter. Yeah, he's 6'7" or so. I mean, he's like Mike Richardson height. I mean, he's really big guy,
Yeah.
And he's imposing, now he's got, his hair's like graying, but it's spiky, so he just looks like a badass. He really does.
Sure.
But when I first met him, and he's just so knowledgeable and he loves comics so much. And he was so inviting. And I met him when she first came out, and Defiant was, I think, by now defunct, but he was just still like an ambassador, I get, if you will. And I had no idea, like you said, some people hate him, editors, some people that work for him, because he was about getting the books done. Like you said, you covered it all in the show, but what an amazing, talented man, and just like I said, 13 years old.
How many editors in chiefs did they go through before he came in? Was it 5?
5 in about like 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, when he came in, though, he really like straightened out the ship. I mean,
somebody had to, and that was the guy that did it. Otherwise, there wouldn't be Marvel, honestly. He really did probably save them in a lot of ways. So there's a lot of things that we can give him credit for. And it looks like the people that didn't like him were more just because he very much imposed his sort of editorial mandates. And it wasn't always, it seems, like just about like hitting the deadlines, which was important, and he could really come down on people. But, he had some very strong opinions on how comics should be made, like what kind of story structure every issue should have. And, he made people follow those rules. And obviously creative types like to have as much sort of freedom as they can. They don't like being like bound in tight. It was interesting. It was a really interesting one. And you know what? It's always a challenge because I just told you guys, like, it's just me doing the show. There's not a lot of sounding boards when I'm trying to do this research and tell a story. I'm like, I try to be even-handed, but I also try to be honest with my audience. Yeah. If I like, if I think that somebody's made a mistake or if I don't like something, I want to be honest about that, but I also want to be even-handed. And it can be very tough actually when you don't have like, sort of a co-host to like go like, does this make sense? So that's a challenge.
Now, do you write full scripts and then because you write full scripts, you put them on big cue cards or something that you can actually, or you just remember like?
Cool question. When I started out, like you'll see an evolution if you watch my episodes. And originally I would sort of have notes, but I'd sort of be like looking at maybe just one comic or 2 comics. And I would sort of be looking at it. I'd say a few lines to the camera. I'd edit it together. Mm-hmm. But at a certain point, it really became like, no, I feel like I'm missing things. So now I write full scripts. And when you see me talking to the camera, I've basically just sat down and memorized that, which is my least favorite part by far. I'm not a big fan of like chopping things up with lots of edits as I'm talking to the camera. So sometimes I have to like memorize like a big paragraph of information. It's pretty, I don't enjoy that part.
Well, there's a story that, and I'm going through it now, and I didn't realize it might be this particular show has almost 660,000 views. It's the Vince Colletta one.
Yeah.
And I know of Vince Colletta through my mentor, who was John Tartaglione, who was one of the art directors up at Marvel, longtime inker. He drew the Pope comic, the Mother Teresa comic, worked on everything. And he would tell stories of Vince Colletta. And it's amazing of how many comic book pros, like Jimmy Palmiotti, a couple others, are fascinated with the story of Vince Colletta. And I was with Larry Hama in the end of January in Albuquerque, at the Albuquerque Con.
Well, I know Larry Hama is one of the guys that knew Vince Colletta. Did he tell you some stories?
Yeah, that was it, because there was a couple of us, a couple of us pros went out, and we just knew of him with the stories that Larry has. I mean, he worked with with
everyone. If there's anyone alive today,
my God. Yeah.
If there's any creator alive today that I would just love to sort of get some drinks in him and just hear stories, it sincerely is Larry Hama.
Yeah, you don't have to get him any drinks. I don't even think he might drink. He might have a beer or two, but he'll just tell. And he knows the stories he has and the stories he was telling about Vince Colletta. And it makes so sense because then I saw your show on him, and again, just judging by the numbers of how many people are fascinated by the story of Vince Coletta, is that Larry was telling me like he was a mobster, like his family was in the mafia. So he didn't care. Like he was breaking people's legs and collecting money and drawing comics to be a front for him.
So it's like I couldn't find any confirmation that he was connected, right? But there's a lot of tangential stories that imply Vince Coletta like it was connected to some, probably connected somehow.
Yeah.
He knew them at least enough to like greet organized crime in like restaurants. He knew he always had beautiful women at his house, and there's allegations that he was some sort of a pimp. I'm not going to report on that because again, that's an allegation that's not verified. But there's so many allegations out there of all sorts of different crazy stuff. It's wild. It's wild. But I'll tell you something else. Like when you're doing this, like YouTube, you're like, when you see an episode do especially well, you're like, well, I'm kind of doing the same thing as always. Why does that one hit more than another? Because I would never think, hey, an inker from like the 1960s, like that shouldn't have as much name recognition as say Jim Lee or something like that, right?
Yeah.
I think some of it is sometimes what you title it. And I called it like, how he ruined Jack Kirby's art, because in my opinion, he did by erasing things. Like I felt like that was ruined. But I think that YouTube revolves very well along negative keywords.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go nuts with that, but I think that honestly, that's a big part of why people check that video out.
Yeah.
So there's a little tip for people starting out with YouTube. Go with really negative titles. You'll probably do pretty well.
Yeah, I guess so. What's our next one, Nile?
I know, right? That's what, we really talk about that all the time. We're like,
how Matt Wagner ruined independent comics.
And people would check it out.
Matt Wagner. Yeah. And Matt
doesn't realize what's coming.
It's very easy to sell out in YouTube. It really is. You totally
Matt Wagner hates you.
He's watching right now like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
No,
why Joe Sinnott has killed cats in the past.
It would probably be watched. It would probably get
it's pretty fantastic because even you have, and now here's a title I'm just scrolling through that you have, I mean, incredibly respectful and huge, 86,000 views for the highs and lows of Tom King's Batman run. Like, and that was a great episode. And rightfully so of how high it is, but you would think something like that would garner far more views than Vince Coletta. And how he ruined
right. He's more modern. Like more kids are reading Batman today than know about Thor from 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Strange, but I think that's
I've heard.
I honestly think that titles and descriptions make a big difference.
I think it does too, but I think it definitely catches the eye of like the hardcore fans because they dive into that stuff. Like they want to know about the creators, and if they like Batman, then they go to back issues, and then like I know buddies of mine will like if they don't know names that worked on that book, they research the hell out of them, and then they'll start like name dropping in conversations, and I'm like I don't even know who that person is. I'm sorry, but then that's probably the guys that are catching on to other creators that you're talking about that may not be as well known to today's reader.
Yeah, and that's the stuff that interests me the most. Like that's almost like an episode I'm doing for me, and it's great when it takes off. I'll tell you that the thing that I feel like I personally want to get better at is thumbnails. I feel like a really clear, interesting, engaging thumbnail can really engage an audience. There's a YouTuber that I noticed like a few months back that does comics. Maybe you guys have seen his channel, Matt Draper.
Draper. I don't think
worth looking at. I just because I intentionally sort of don't watch many comic book channels. I don't want to get my opinions influenced.
Yeah.
But I kept noticing his thumbnails because they were really nice and clean and clear. And I was like, oh, I get what that's about. And finally I was like, oh, well, I've already covered that topic. So I'm going to watch his take on it. And I really liked it. So I feel a little disconnected sometimes from the comic book YouTube community because I'm trying to keep my opinions my own and not get influenced by other channels. But that was one that I'm a little jealous of how good he is with his thumbnails.
Yeah, he has some decent thumbnails here. Let me pull this up here.
They're nice and clean and clear.
Yeah, they're pretty. Yeah, it's kind of like a simple thumbnail because it is hard doing thumbnails. That's why I kind of went with almost like a convention theme style.
What's that? What's a comic convention? Oh yeah, that's terrific.
This is the guy right here, right?
Yeah, that's
yeah. Doesn't that look nice and clean?
Yeah.
You can tell right away what he's going to be talking about, and then there's a little more information in his description. I'm impressed with that.
Yeah, so he's got
Sure.
34, almost 35,000 subscribers.
And he hasn't been going that long. He's increased very quickly.
Yeah.
He's a guy that will probably pass me.
No.
No, I'm serious. It might. It's a good show.
It's a good show. I'll check this out. You know, anyone else out there too, check this out if you can. Matt Draper.
You know what I love about your shows too, Chris, is that they're really educational. I learn a lot from it. And
that's interesting to hear about. Like, I mean, you've been in the industry for a long time. I mean, you've been in it for a minute. Like, I'm sure you know a lot of people, but thanks.
Yeah, but I've never, like, the one that I loved was the history of every crisis in DC Comics.
Yeah.
You know, and we had that conversation with Marv at dinner. And then Marv came onto our show and told a story about Crisis, you know, the original Crisis Infinite Earths. If I know it's not the whole show, you produce a whole hour, a whole 15-minute show or whatever. But what's your basic analysis of these multiple crises? You know, why do you think DC did them? And how do you feel that they affected the DC universe overall?
Honestly, when you look at the crisis stories, a lot of them do function as sort of a meta-narrative of what the DC editors wanted to get accomplished at that time. So when, like, the big Crisis on Infinite Earths happened in '85, their goal was to bring in a bunch of new characters that they bought and kill off some that they didn't think were very popular. You know, and that's basically what the villain wants to do. You know, the villain wants to, like, kill off Supergirl and Flash and stuff, and he's just acting as an avatar for the editors. 0 Hour was sort of a crisis type story where they're trying to clean up their continuity, and that was what the editors were trying to do. They were trying to make sense of it. It's interesting. I don't personally think it's necessary. I don't think that it's bad, but I don't think it's necessary. I think that if you want to make things more streamlined or kill off a character, that you can do that pretty easily without an event behind it dictating that needs to get done. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily needed on a meta level, but I think that basically a lot of editors maybe are sort of feeling the same things, and that, well, let's make a story out of it. I don't know.
That's good. Now, Heroin Burr asks, is Flashpoint considered one of the crises?
I would say yes. I mean, crisis is kind of a nebulous, but it's a valuable word for DC. And I guess they probably at that one moment didn't think that they were going to, like, use it. But I think that a crisis is anything that sort of forms a big event for DC. They sort of have ownership of that word, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it. I remember, Marv was just talking about, like, oh yeah, we did the one crisis, and there was another crisis, then crisis, and they kind of started just naming everything crisis at the end of it.
Originally, like, crisis was just
like Alfred goes on vacation,
like crossovers, like Earth 1 and Earth 2, but it built into Crisis on Infinite Earths. Really rebooted that.
And the Mobsy says the Crisis series destroyed the DC legacy and ruined fan favorites.
Everybody's going to have a different opinion on that. I mean, you know, the comics that DC was putting out right after Crisis were some of their most popular. I mean, they all of a sudden got some of those big names like John Byrne, and they were doing very well. Like, DC had not been doing very well into, like, you know, the late '70s and stuff like that. They needed Crisis. They needed it, and it worked for them. Yeah.
Oh no, Marvel was destroying them.
They were. The DC implosion is definitely an episode that I want to talk about at some point.
Mm-hmm.
You should
do it. You should definitely do that.
Given Blue Devil.
You guys have convinced me. I'll do it.
All right, there you go.
It needs to be had, they said. What are you saying, Billy?
My wife is texting me that when I drink red wine, it's my son's birthday. So we had cake and dinner. Like, we had a virtual birthday party. She set up Zoom, and had on the iPad, and all my in-laws and my mom and his cousins and stuff were all watching. We had a virtual birthday party. But, while we were setting up, Nile, I mean, we had to open a couple of bottles of wine. So
how many bottles of wine?
Black. She says my teeth get black when I have red wine.
Oh, that's why they're black?
I'll be honest. This quarantine has definitely made me drink more than in the past. Like, I just constantly have alcohol by my side these days. I know it's not healthy, but it's not just me. We're all doing it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, we bought 6 bottles of wine 2 weeks ago. We got one left now.
I'll be right over.
And and she popped it up. She popped it up, and she's like, "This is not going to be enough wine." I'm like, "You're right." So I've been doing, but I discovered the Quarantini. So we have emergency. So I had bought some seltzer. We had vodka, and I make vodka seltzer and emergency. And we've got the blueberry acai and tangerine and orange. So I make a different one every night.
That's like a flaming Mo.
A flaming what?
A flaming Mo.
Is that what that really is?
That's a deep
crusty the clown cough syrup.
Oh, okay.
That's the key ingredient. You've got, what is it? Emergency. They're using that, and that's the Quarantini. Is
the Quarantini emergency and vodka. I put seltzer in with the vodka too.
Yeah.
I like seltzer.
I guess most people are just doing vodka, I think, and the emergency, and you feel great afterwards.
You know what's kind of messed up though? You're right. I've been doing a lot more drinking than I normally would, and I'm kind of looking at my cabinet, oh shit. I don't want to go out. What am I going to do? And now more and more places are closing.
Yeah. Yep, they are. I heard that they're going to make some liquor stores. Well, liquor stores in New Jersey are not going to be considered essential.
Oh, no kidding.
So the government's going to shut that down. It's like, what? What? Come on.
Connecticut's revising their essential businesses, and they said we're going to narrow it even further.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you guys are in a part of it right now, so they have to be extra careful, I guess.
Yeah. It's crazy.
You're behind us in New York, and this is going to be a rough 2 weeks for us. But the rates this week are now every 6 days, I think. It's doubling the total numbers. Last week it was every day it was doubling. And then it went to every 2 days. Then it went to every 3 days. Now it's every 6 days doubling. So hopefully who knows? Like I said,
don't think that's right.
It's all of us can think about right now. It's the only thing in the news. It's prevalent in my head. And, there was a small part of me that was like, should I be doing just episodes about comics? It starts to feel a little less important than it was. And then I said, no, you know what? Even if it has nothing to do with what's going on, people need a distraction. So the fact that you guys are doing this show, I do think it's needed on a certain level. I don't think it's as important as say the people that are out there picking up our garbage or working at the grocery stores. But right. I do think that everybody needs a little bit of an escape outlet right now. So,
well, what do you think? Someone who does work at the grocery store, when he gets home, every person he comes across is wearing a mask. That's all they're talking about, or that's all they're thinking. Every radio station, that's all you hear. Every television station's all you hear. And by the evening, say when you get to 8, 6, oh shit, you get 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You're like, I'm done. I don't want to listen anymore.
Yeah,
it's all bad news, and it's going to be bad news for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. Who knows?
8, and who knows?
So that's why
my job is selling cars, and I was doing it up until a few days ago when finally the government said no, you're not essential, and I was grateful. Honestly, I like my coworkers, and I don't mind my work, but it was very stressful for a couple weeks. It was you're just meeting strangers constantly, and you have to be in really close quarters. And I have so much sympathy right now for not just the healthcare workers, but people that are at the grocery stores and pharmacies. Just stressful times.
Yeah, I can imagine. You know what? It's funny. Me and my wife were just talking about that today, and I was like, I wonder. Think about it, because they're not the most well-paid employees. And they should be getting this pays and this and that, but they're literally risking their lives for a little over minimum wage. Some of these employees.
Yeah,
I feel for them.
It's tough.
And the only thing I could say is I was hearing that a lot of people are having food delivered these days. Cool.
Yeah.
That makes sense. You can do like a non-interaction thing where you can just have them leave it at your doorstep and you paid with like your credit card and stuff. And people aren't paying a tip as much because they're not seeing the person face to face. Come on, folks.
Yeah, come on.
Tip those people. They deserve it. They deserve it more than ever. Tip them. Tip them if you can. If you can, please tip them.
Yeah,
of course. Just leave an envelope.
And you think too with like comic shops, and what's really scary and just shows just how insoluble the comic book industry is as a whole is that Diamond announced that they were closing down or not delivering less than 2 weeks ago. And now the entire industry, a week ago, is on the verge of collapse in a week, 10 days perhaps.
And now they're saying they can't.
DC's main printer, they also closed down?
Yeah, well, we can't. That's the same thing with us. Like our printed books, I have a crowdfunded. I'm doing She right now, bringing She back, Return of the Warrior. And we're set
smooth,
hopefully, to go now, push back into April to print. But once those printers are all closed down, once they reopen, they're not committing to giving me a date, because what if DC comes in or a bigger company that needs, well, I have 100,000 books instead of my, say, 10,000, 8,000 books I have. They're going to push us back. But that pushes my other campaign, that pushes my Hotaru book, which we want to launch in May. That's going to push that back now. And then to June or so, then that's going to push the next one back. Mm-hmm. So it's so frustrating, but
it's a cascading effect. We're all affected by this in ways that we can't even predict. I don't know what will happen to the industry here, but maybe you heard DC is started reaching out to other distributors. They've got it in their contract that Diamond is their exclusive, but if Diamond can't perform their services, they're allowed to look at other options. A lot of people have said that Diamond is essentially a monopoly, and it is essentially. Maybe some good will come out of this long term for the comics industry, because I do think that we need new channels that are hungry to try to find new outlets to put comics in. That aren't just complacent with business as usual. So I'm trying to be positive and say like maybe something good will happen with this long term. But in the here and now, it's a tough time. It's a tough time.
Yeah, I think we're going to see that. I think we are going to see Diamond stepping back. And it's kind of interesting, and I don't think it's because of, well, I think they did what they did because of this, but I've also heard through the grapevine with other things, and I love the Jeppies. I think they're great people. Josh and Steve.
Look at what you're wearing.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that funny? I got a couple of them at
my shirt, bro.
shows. Yeah.
Just cold and rainy today.
Yeah, wear that shirt on the rainy days. Nice. Anyways, there was even some like structures, some changes structurally that almost questioned. And I remember people were even asking me, "Hey, do you know anything about Diamond? Are they going to be going out, or what's going on?" And I wonder if this was going to kind of be their way out.
It's also to no fault of their own, though. I mean, if the state shuts you down, you can have these people working in this where there's not.
No, I think it's the right thing to do probably right now.
I'm it's 100% the right thing to do.
Operating like at full capacity. I'm stunned.
But you know what? Also, it's good because if they delivered these books, the retailers would have been forced to take them. And then but there's no customers in the retailer's store.
Correct.
So the retailers, it's better off for the retailers for them to put this pause on.
So my local comic store, Stargazer, is basically not open to the public, but they're open in the sense that they can still do curbside pickup if you want something specific. Obviously, they're not getting new comics, but you could ask for certain things. And they can do deliveries. They can like mail stuff out pretty cheap. So a lot of stores are trying to do that just to like get the business. I don't know if it's going to be enough business for them to all survive. Probably not all of them.
Yeah.
Like my local comic shop, he's doing the same thing. He's closed. He's like closed unless you know him. And, he won't let you in the store, but he'll bring your stuff out. You call him, tell him what you want, what you're looking for. If he's got it, he'll bring it out to your car. But, he's smart because a lot of the most successful comic shops in my area, a lot of them, majority of their business is through eBay anyways.
Sure.
And online. So that is keeping them afloat you know, the local comic shops I know that have been around for over 30 years because they have massive eBay and online presence. So that's continuing to thrive. Even with people being laid off right now, they're fortunate that they're still able to stay afloat with that. It's so crazy, though. I feel bad for the guys that aren't, or even the ones that just opened. You know, I know a shop that just opened.
Well, the thing is, I think Diamond makes something like or brings in $500 million a year.
Right.
This is what I've heard. So that means that if it's 8 weeks that they're out of business, is that 50 million or something like that? And then we have people coming to us that they want to try to raise money for the comic shops. How are we going to raise that kind of money to help these comics? We can't raise that kind of money to help the shops. No. I can't do my math. I don't know if you could do math, Nile, or Chris, but if it's 8 weeks out of, if they make $500 million a year, what's 8 weeks out of that? Out of 300, you know what I mean? You got to divide 500 divided by 52.
It's a 6. It's a 6. So yeah,
6. So we're gonna have to try and raise.
It's gonna be close to 100 million.
Yeah, and how are we gonna do? And they're going to all us pros. Can you donate some artwork? Yeah, can you donate a sketch? Sure, I'd love to help them out, but then I'm like, how is that possible? Of all the company, of all the stores.
Here's what bothers me. Great, they're bringing in that kind of money. Lots of companies are bringing in lots of money. Mm-hmm. I feel like they should be equipped, if it's a well-run business like Diamond, not your local comic store, but something like Diamond, be equipped to like weather a couple bad weeks or a couple bad months even, as compared to like, you know, they're expecting employees to just like be okay with like, you know, maybe not getting paid. Like, no, these companies need to be able to weather times like this. It kind of shows that we're going down a whole rabbit hole.
Oh,
of,
yeah,
you know, more like the economy and stuff at this point as compared to comics. But yeah.
Yeah, it's just shitty.
It is. It really is.
Speaking of Diamond, though, like, you know, what are they saying now? That there's the cash flow isn't there now? Right. Or something. I just read that article, you know. But I've you know, I'm mentioning it, but I didn't even finish reading the article. But I mean, is it the cash flow going to who though? Their employees going back to the comic shop? I mean, what were they talking about cash flow wise? Did you guys?
It's a big
I mean, hopefully they keep cash on hand and have investments to draw in times like this.
Yeah.
But then again,
no matter what, Steve Jeppy has that like, you know, museum with like basically every original comic and every piece of original art ever.
It's gone. He donated all to the Smithsonian last year. Closed it up. It's gone.
Okay, I'm out of the loop on that one. I did not know that. I went there several times when I lived in DC. That was an incredible museum.
Yeah.
That was incredible. There's not enough comic book museums.
Nope. No, and I mean they had every book. Like
they had everything. It was amazing.
It's incredible. And all of that was donated. It was donated to the Smithsonian, or was it donated to the Library of Congress?
Oh, I think the Library of Congress.
Right. I didn't know that. Oh man. No kidding.
It's a hell of a tax write-off.
The bat phone is gone.
I'm surprised his son didn't want to keep it going or anything.
It's a lot of work.
It is.
And I mean, I can't imagine what the rent he was paying down there. Right,
it was right next to Camden Yard. I mean, it had to be a fortune. That's the one part of Baltimore that, like, you know, can actually charge high rents. It was nice. It was a really nice museum.
Yeah,
it's actually where I met my fiance.
Really?
At a comic book museum?
She knew that, like, a bunch of my friends, like when I was living in DC, I helped form a group called the DC Conspiracy, which is still around today. And what we'd do is we'd meet once a month at this huge bar that used to be an auto shop. So it was huge. It was huge. You could push together tables, and we'd all draw, and we'd come up with comics together. It's fantastic. And we'd go on field trips. We'd go to the Frazetta Museum. We'd go to a convention. We went to, you know, the museum, the Comic Book History Museum. And anyway, our group was doing so well that we would also throw sort of not a convention, but like, you know, like a festival once a year. And we'd hire local bands and stuff. And my fiance was in a band. We hired her, and she thought the group sounded cool. So she came to one of our meetings, which was going to that museum. That's where we met.
Oh, nice.
So she came to the meeting because she thought the meeting was going to be cool.
Yeah.
I think she thought you were cool. I think she just was looking for an excuse to hang out with you, buddy.
Probably.
There you go. Because she had watched your show, and she was secretly a big fan of yours.
I didn't have the show then. This was like 13 years ago.
Oh, okay. Well, we can't use that one against her then.
I guess not. No.
I took my poor wife to a Phil Suling comic book convention in 1988.
No kidding.
At the Penta Hotel in New York City, and I think she was the only woman there, a girl there.
Huge name in the world of distribution.
And it was she was just being banged around and touched, and she's just like, "Ew, I gotta go."
What kind of convention were you at?
At the Penta Hotel, a comic convention think of comic books in 1988. Think of comic conventions when you were 4 years old, Nile. There was no women. It was all men. Not even a quarter as good looking as the three of us right here.
No, that's true.
And she was just like, "Oh my God, I got to go." I'm like,
my wife won't even
step
foot in a
And then I'm like, "Are you breaking up with me?" She's like, No, I'll see you back at the dorms. No, it's you. You just
I do sort of feel, and this is completely unscientific because this is just my opinion. Yeah. I do feel like in the last 5 years or so that comic book conventions have gotten a little bit more diverse in terms of who they're attracting, because there was a long time through the late 80s into the early 90s where it was just white dudes. And I do see a lot more women. I do see a lot more kids. I think people are more into the cosplay aspect, but to me that's adding to the entertainment value of going to a convention. So I love it.
Well, being into this stuff is cool now. It's not like a closet thing anymore. Because I'll be, there was times you didn't really talk about if you were into certain things, especially with unfortunately, your teenage status. If you're popular, it wasn't cool to be like, "Hey, I'm a Trekkie" or this and that. I didn't come out as a Trekkie till I was 26. And then I was like, you know what? I don't care. I'm just like, I'm a Trekkie, man.
I remember in 1987, I was I had some friends in school that were like, "Hey, I've seen these commercials for something called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Chris, you probably know about that, don't you?" And I was just like, "Yeah, I love it." Used to get made fun of for that, but comics, or at least that sort of nerd culture, has definitely gone mainstream in a huge way.
Now, what's the thing you said? Hey,
hey, is that comics?
Yeah.
Hey, is that comics?
Books?
Is that comics?
Anyway, well, speaking of great comics, I really was glad that you covered Black Sad.
Oh man,
I had just discovered that last year because I had to do for the Baltimore Comic Con. It was like the 30th anniversary of Black Sad or something, and that was their book, And they asked me to do a pinup in the book, the charity book. I'm like, "What is this?" So Mark sent me a book. I'm like, "Oh my God!" Right? I don't know, people out there, if you guys are fans of Black Sad, if you want to tell me a little bit about it, Chris. But wow, I mean,
all I can say is some of the most gorgeous artwork out there. Stefano Guardino, could be mispronouncing his name, but yeah, Spanish artists. They publish through a French publisher. Black Sad. It's noir detective stories set in America, but all done with anthropomorphic animals. Normally not necessarily my thing, but he uses it to sort of tell something about the character by showing that animal has a certain characteristic that they'll either play into or subvert. Gorgeous artwork. Gorgeous.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. The story's great. I mean, it's beautiful. It's brutal. It's believe it or not, it's sexy. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, what art and storytelling, just astonishing.
I definitely try to do episodes about stuff that's not just superheroes or mainstream stuff, and some people get frustrated that I don't do it enough, but I definitely try to cover foreign comics, independent comics, old stuff as well as new stuff. So yeah, there's a lot in there, and for me, I don't love a specific comic book. I love the medium. I love what you can do with comics.
Yeah. What's your thought on crowdfunding comics?
It's an interesting idea. To me, it still feels so new. I'm definitely never against somebody taking control and creating their own opportunity. I told you earlier about helping co-found that group, the DC Conspiracy. That was creating our own opportunities, and we were self-publishing stuff. If we had crowdfunding at the time, maybe we would have tried that. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm necessarily plugged in. I feel like these days, every creator needs to be their own marketing hype man.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to use their social media to the best of their ability to sort of interest those people into buying into their crowdfunding idea. So that's a huge challenge.
Yeah,
I've definitely got respect for people that can succeed in the sense that not just get the funding, but also produce the finished product. And I'm all for anything that disrupts the system. Like I said, I don't dislike Diamond, but I would love to see more opportunities and more options in the world of comics. I'd love to see comics get into more people's hands. So I'm all for like disrupting things. That's about all I can say. I wouldn't say that I'm super plugged in on like who's doing what. I've worked on a couple here and there. Like I know like my buddy Randy Stone just did a crowdfunding thing on a great book that he did called Death and Comics. Maybe it's not cool to plug things, but
absolutely. No, go right ahead. That's pretty much our show is.
And I was really proud of him that he saw that through to completion and got it printed like really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Death and Comics. We should get him on the show if he'd come on.
I'm sure he'd be happy to talk about his comics. He's a
great title.
That's just doing his own thing.
Yeah, the outlet for our show, I mean, is being Crowdfunding Comics. I mean, we originated it as the show to bring the creators on that had active campaigns. Obviously we review their projects, see what they have. I mean, when we started the show, we got swamped. We still are. I mean, we're booked with guests into. I think we actually started. I think Frank has a couple of people now already heading into July. But we keep certain slots open and stuff because we come across other great creators like yourself and it's like, oh, let's see if we can squeeze them in. So we hold like little holding spots. But they felt
like a challenge. It sounds like a challenge for you guys because personally I feel like when I get asked to signal boost in social media or something, I really want to vet something, So that's like really a big challenge to sort of like to give people that platform. But I definitely admire it.
Well, you know what I love about it is that, like, we have a show, and then we all meet at the bar, say the hotel bar, or we might go to dinner, and you hear, and you hear so many of the greatest comic stories you'll never ever read because you'll have Frank quietly tell something he has a story he has, or Scott Snyder, oh, I got this story, but they said no, and I'm like, oh my God, that's a great story, but you see the passion of them telling these stories, and now with crowdfunding that we could bring on these guests that are actually doing it, that are doing those books. And I broke in, much about me, but I broke in the mid 90s and we had this real independent explosion. There was Jeff Smith and Terry Moore and Brian Polito, me, Jimmy Palmiotti and Joe Quesada would event. Mm-hmm. Lots of really great, great indie people coming out with books. All, Stan Sakai was doing it, even though he was with Dark Horse, but it was still his creator-owned book.
Right.
So I was... Right.
No, they're been the 80s stuff that you're talking about, like Stan Sakai and Dave Sim and all these guys from the 80s, the Eastman and Laird. But you're right, like the mid-90s, when you got into it, it was like a whole new wave.
Mm-hmm. Right, but then those guys like Dave, and Dave kind of scared me. He's a little scary, weird guy, a little bit. No offense, Dave. But he said some things my wife didn't like him. Like my wife's like, I don't like that guy. Right. But Stan, but Stan Sakai, Sergio Aragones, they brought, they like took us under their wing because they had been doing this for a decade or so. Kevin Eastman, come sit with us. So we're like. Yeah, I remember me and Jeff Smith, you know what I mean? And he would bone explode and we're like, okay, And it was really cool because then we all sat around, and, the bar would close and we're just sitting there talking. And I remember some of them would be smoking cigarettes, and stuff that you could do back then. And you just hear these stories and, but we had, the monthly schedule of bi-monthly books and all. And we're revisiting that now with our YouTube channel because of all these people doing Indiegogo books, and people doing Kickstarters, and they're doing it now. And you just hear that passion in there. And I'm doing this, I couldn't get into the comic shops, or the numbers weren't good enough. But if I can get 300 of my very best friends, you know, or I can get this book done. And it's so great. You know, it really is. And it's all, sorry, my allergies bother me. It's all what you own. You know, like your buddy over there with Death and Comics. He owns it. He can do whatever he wants.
Well, my favorite stuff is honestly like going to conventions and then just hanging out with pros and hearing the stories afterwards. Like Rick Remender has some great stories. Eric Larson has amazing stories. Like there's some guys out there that they're just really, really fun to hang out with after the shows. It's some of the best. And then I was just going to say, like the episode I'm going to be releasing as soon as this episode is done, I've got it like, you know, ready to launch. It's going to be on Kevin Eastman's Wild History. He's definitely a guy that was very involved in creators' rights and self-publishing. What a story he had. He's you know what I miss is his partner, Peter Laird's Zurich grant.
Mm-hmm.
I never met Peter. Kevin was at a lot of conventions, you know, back in the, and I don't remember meeting Peter, ever getting together with him or anything like that. But Kevin is one of the sweethearts. Well, he's kind of supposed to come on our show a couple of times, right? And
I'm kind of like sitting here, like, is this a sign? Is this a sign? Because even today, I've been exchanging some correspondence trying to get him on.
Oh, good luck, guys. Good luck. He's amazing.
Yeah, it would be great to get him on. I mean, he knows Billy. Billy knows him. You know, so I'm hoping we can get him on to chat, and you know, especially with the the whole quarantine thing. I mean, we've been. You know, some people joke, when did Crowdfunding Comics become like a daily show? Well, we're just trying to, have a little escapism out there, get some creators on, talk about stuff. Because that's what's cool. Like, having even like, we had Eric Larson on. It was just three of us basically shooting the shit, telling stories, things like that. You get these guys on and you just talk, and it's freaking great. We've been really trying to do our, so we have Crowdfunding Comics mainstream, which is like, for the guys that are in the industry and whatnot. And then, regular crowdfunding comics for the actual guys out there, with campaigns.
So you guys talk about, with a lot of your guests, crowdfunding. And one thing I just brought up was something that like is no longer with us, but the Zurich grant was something where Peter Laird would give, a grant of just pass on the money to somebody to then self-publish their comic. It was the days before there was crowdfunding. And I thought that was incredible. I mean, it gave us guys like Farrell Dalrymple. Peter Laird stopped giving out because of web comics and crowdfunding. And that's fine. It's cool that people can do it on their own. But I do wish that there was still creators that were willing to give out grants like that. I think that like it really gave us some amazing talent. And it really like, it was like, you're not going to guide the person through every step. You're just going to say, you seem to have talent. Here's the money. Prove yourself. I love that. I love it.
Yeah. Yep. Well, here's in these trying times, Chris, here's another great thing is that you have a show that people love. I mean, like I said, you've got over 100,000 subscribers. So you have a show. This could be an opportunity for you. Now, I'm sorry that, and again, it sucks that, you're closed down your everyday work. But you could look at this kind of, you have a few pops, you know what I mean? And put together, now you could do those shows you really normally don't have time to.
I'm trying to do an extra. I'm trying to do some extra over the next couple of weeks. We shall see.
Well, you draw as well.
Anything in the queue?
Like I say, as soon as this is done, I'm going to make my episode on Kevin Eastman go live. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do like sort of a light, funny episode about something Golden Age, and I'm working on something about John Buscema, who's huge name that I just don't feel like I've seen any sort of documentary or deep dive on him yet. So I feel like I noticed another great change in his style at a certain point. So
Sal Buscema
is a great subject because he's overshadowed by Big John.
Yeah, that's true.
Body of work that he's done, and he's got his own fans. There are people that are more Sal Buscema fans.
I grew up reading Spectacular Spider-Man with Sal Buscema's art, and it was great. It was great. I do like to give credit to some of those less acknowledged creators from time to time. But so that's definitely something I'd love to cover.
A great story would be John Romita taking over Spider-Man from Ditko.
Absolutely.
That would be the transition, Spider-Man from Ditko to Romita. That's probably 2 shows or 3 shows, but what a great.
Agreed.
That would be a really interesting thing.
And it's definitely like there's so many ideas that I have for shows. Like, one thing that's funny is people will constantly send me emails or social media messages being like, hey, how about an episode about this? It's like, I've definitely considered that. Trust me.
Well, if you keep growing the way you can grow, hopefully you can get to the point where the show is your bread and butter.
That's what I'd like. Yeah. You know, I sort of, I've said no to any sort of sponsorships for a long, long time, and I'd like to keep that true as long as possible. I've said no to all sorts of like ads and stuff like that, but I would love it if I was able to sort of convert some of my followers to say like just giving me just $1 on Patreon.
Yeah,
because it would obviously take at this point a very small percentage of them for me to make a living doing this, and I would love to not just talk about comics, but use some of that money to make some of my own comics. I would also love to get back in. I've done some self-publishing, and I'd love to do some more.
Well, you know, it doesn't
hurt.
hurt.
You draw yourself, correct?
I do. I usually do about like one story a year, just so that I can sort of maintain my professional credentials for going to conventions.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you.
I also have been proofreading Robert Kirkman's book since day one.
Oh wow!
Oh really?
No way!
Wow.
Yeah, back when he did Battle Pope. Let me see.
Yeah,
that was his first thing that he did with like himself. Like he self-published stuff, and this is just one of the trade paperbacks, and like that's just my intro.
There you go.
Talking about that. So yeah, like Walking Dead and Invincible and stuff like that is stuff that I've been proofreading.
Invincible is, I loved Invincible. Well, I'm not going to say loved. I love Invincible. I think it was great.
Well, tell him I said hello. He told a funny story about me at a panel, and I didn't realize it. I had I had a comic book called The Atomic Angels, and I had the motorcycle, and it was part of the display, you know. And I'm like, oh, okay, we'll bring them. You know, Rob Liefeld built a spaceship, so I'm like, oh, I'll bring a motorcycle. I got to ride a motorcycle off, and he said that I was trying to get it out of the back of the pickup truck, and he was young, he was a kid, and I'm like, hey, you're a big dude. Can you help me take this off? And he helped me take my motorcycle off the back.
That's great.
And I'm like, was I nice? He goes, oh yeah, you were really nice. He said, thank you, and all this.
That's awesome. You know, that makes me think of another YouTube show that I do watch regarding comics. Do you guys watch Jason Latour's show, The Drawl?
Yep.
No, I've
never.
never.
Yeah,
so Nile does, Billy doesn't. But Jason Latour writes and illustrates a lot of comics these days. Spider-Gwen and Southern Bastards. He just had Robert Kirkman on for a 3-part interview, and that's pretty interesting. Like, you know, they just sort of sit down and either have like, you know, a meal or a drink, and he has a pretty good show there. And that's definitely his episode where Jason Latour interviews Robert Kirkman. That's definitely a great episode to watch.
Now check it out, because I don't want to watch the friggin' news anymore.
Exactly. But I think you learn a lot from stuff like that. Like, I would love to at some point do what you guys are doing is do more interviews. Yeah, the draw.
And we want to do more of what you're doing.
Well,
I gotta do some reviews. I
really do. But before I did this, I did do like a podcast for like about 8 years with a friend where we talked about TV, like sort of genre TV. And I've always wanted to like get like sort of more interactive and stuff. And I would interview celebrities so like I would get guys like George R.R. Martin for Game of Thrones or Stan Lee. I got to interview Stan Lee. That was amazing. You know,
nice.
Like, so I would do weekly interviews with people in the world of TV. And I love doing interviews. I love trying to get into like, you know, somebody's creative headspace and see what their day-to-day life is.
I'd love to see you do an interview with Greg Land and Rob Liefeld.
Those are
good ones.
That do well because, as I told you earlier,
they were good ones. Yeah,
going a little negative does well on Facebook, YouTube.
Yeah, they're good eggs though, so I'm sure they'd get a kick out of it. It's not like you're wrong.
Have you guys ever seen Manben by Naoki Urasawa?
No.
That's a Japanese TV show. Naoki Urasawa is a great creator that's done stuff like Pluto and Monster and 20th Century Boys. He did a show for, I believe it was NHK, but it was like a Japanese like PBS basically. Mm-hmm. And what he did was like a documentary where he would sit down with a creator for the whole day and like see their process for how they created stuff. And just every once in a while go, hey, why did you do things this way? Why did you do that way? That's interesting. I love that. It's incredible. That's the kind of thing I would love to be able to do. Sort of what you guys are doing of interviewing, but like really break it down day to day. That's sort of my ultimate goal for if my show became something where I could make a living. That's what I would like to do is interview creators and understand that day to day life.
Yeah.
Well, you're on your way to making that happen, and that's the best part of comic conventions is hanging out after the show. I mean, so many comic fans have become my best friends. They're like family to us. You just know these people over 10, 15, 20 years. And the same thing with with comic pros. There's jerks everywhere. I might be a jerk. People may think I'm a jerk, but you find some really great friends. And there's just nothing better than sitting down and having a beer or something, at the end of a long show and you're tired.
I love it.
And that's what we want to do with this show is let's just
Do
talk.
either of you have a favorite convention?
Ooh, Scala, what do you say?
Where you've had like just your best experiences?
Yeah, I'd have to say personal. Aside from San Diego, let's take San Diego out of it because San Diego is just on a whole nother level because everyone's there. Yeah. And it's not too big. Like New York Comic Con, everyone's there, but there's 275,000 people and you don't see anyone. Really, but San Diego. Yeah, San Diego, you always do end up, there's like maybe some parties or get-togethers. But I got to tell you, I love, please do an episode on Richard Meyer and Ethan Van Sciver. And the Shooter one was great. We talked about the Shooter one. Shooter one was great, Michael Connor. Oh, he agrees. Sorry, so I lost my train of thought. You're popping things up in front of me.
If either of you had a favorite convention that you've been to.
I love the Baltimore Comic Con.
This last Baltimore one was probably my favorite convention so far that I've attended.
And Terrificon is great up in Connecticut. It's at the Mohegan Sun Casino.
Right.
And you don't have to go outside. Mm-mm. And there's everything's there inside. I mean, there's so many restaurants and I don't gamble. But those two are great. And but a lot of the small shows are a lot of fun. When there's just a few of us, like we went to Paris, and it was me, Jimmy Palmiotti, Amanda Connor, Brian Azzarello, Matt Fraction, Frank Miller, Frank Thierry was there. That was incredible because we spent every night together.
That sounds great.
And you're just sitting there with Frank Miller. You know what I mean? It's like, what is going on? And then London was a great one too. London was crazy. We got an egg thrown at us, and they called the cops. It was me, John Romita Jr., Frank Quitely, Frank Thierry. Who else? Was Jimmy there? Maybe Jimmy, and we just sitting outside smoking cigars. And I don't know if Adam Hughes was there, maybe. And we were just talking, being New Yorkers and just talking and laughing outside. And all of a sudden, you'd see an egg come and hits us from the apartment building across from the hotel. And now, of course, I don't know if you know Frank Thierry, and Jimmy like, come on, fucking down here, I'm from New York, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, 2 cop cars pull up. Whoop, whoop. We're like, what? He's like, just go inside, mates. It was fun.
That's hilarious.
Those are the memories,
Nile?
Things like that.
You got one?
Oh yeah, no, I was saying just this past Baltimore. That has been my favorite convention.
That's where you harassed Jim Lee, wasn't it?
No, I didn't harass him.
Did you stalk him? What'd you do, Jim Lee?
I just went up to him. I went up to him like I was like the biggest name in the business. Like, Jim Lee, Nile, Scala, how you doing? Billy Tucci, a good friend of mine. Yeah, we got a show, this and that. You should check it out sometime. Here's my card, pal. And if you ever need anything, give me a shout.
That's a great idea. Yeah. You got to hustle. I think my favorite is, and I love the big conventions like Baltimore or New York and stuff like that. But I also love the intimacy of the smaller ones, like the Small Press Expo. That's pretty close in Bethesda, Maryland. That's some of my favorite times because sometimes I always love going to Artist Alley and trying to discover new things. But when you're at the big convention, a lot of those can just be like maybe prints and stuff like that you're not too interested in. At Small Press Expo, no matter what, the people there are passionate. And you're either going to find something funny or something autobiographical that's really honest and intimate, or maybe like, the next Blankets or Bone or Scott Pilgrim or something. So like, yeah, Small Press Expo, SPX is definitely
absolutely
one of my favorites.
So I remember the old MegaCon was great. I haven't been since it was bought out. I haven't been there in 3 years. But the old MegaCon was so great because this convention, Chris, was in February or early March in Orlando, Florida. So there you go. So all of us from the Northeast, we were like, yeah, we'll go there, and everyone was there. And I remember just sitting out in the back by the pool and having a cigar with Darwin Cook and Adam Hughes, just hanging out, sitting by the pool, and just people are scattered around, and we're like, and just talking stuff. And Adam wanted to write Wonder Woman. This is a while back, and he had this great idea for Wonder Woman. So we're like, write it. No, they don't want me to write it. I'm not a writer. I'm like, you're Adam friggin' Hughes. You can do whatever you want. Tell them you want to write it. You write it. Yeah. So that was a good time.
Darwin Cook. I was lucky enough to hang out with him once. He gave a speech in D.C. at like one of the Smithsonian's. Humongous snowstorm. Humongous. Only a small amount of us were able to make it there, and we were really snowed in. And so after he gave his sort of lecture and a Q&A, he just hung out with us in the lobby, and it was one of the best times I ever had talking with a pro, and I miss him tremendously. Like what an amazing talent, and just an amazing guy. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, loved him. Michael Connor says loved MegaCon 10 years ago. Yeah, that's the way it was, and it was tremendous. I mean, Darwin, I loved Darwin. Yeah. And I remember one time he told me I had pitched something to DC, and everyone loved it, and I think it would have been great. And I remember I was heartbroken, and I called him up because someone rejected it. Somebody for some reason rejected it. It had nothing to do with continuity, but just somebody we're going to pass on that. And I remember telling him I was really upset. And he's like, Billy, don't you realize? He goes, we love their characters more than they do. That's what he said. Us creators, and we get in trouble for it a lot.
True.
Because we all got into it because we love comics.
Yeah.
We're not like Jack Kirby that, after the war needed a job.
Well, Billy, you're talking about like rejected pitches. And I just got to say, like right now, like the last 2 or 3 days on Twitter, Rick Remender has been sharing tons of rejected pitches that he had.
Oh, really?
He had a ton of success like at Marvel. But it's amazing to see how many rejections he got. And I really think it should just show like a lot of us out there that perseverance and tenacity counts for a lot in this industry.
Yeah.
Just not taking no for an answer. I really think that's, if there's one thing in common from anybody I know that's been successful in comics, it's that they never really took that no for a final answer. They kept at it. Yeah. I don't know if I still have it, but you know what? Like I've got something weird to show you guys. Hold on. Let me see if I've got it here. All right, I'm not going to open this because I promised
big
not
screen,
to.
Chris. Nile.
Yeah. All right. Robert Kirkman, somebody that I know decently, he's had a lot of rejected pitches, and I'm not going to like open this because I promised him not to. But this is like a pitch that he had for like a sci-fi zombie book before Walking Dead ever. Didn't take no for an answer. He just kept pitching like variations until he got it. And I would just say that like that's advice that I could give for anyone out there that wants to sort of break into comics.
Yeah.
If somebody gives you a no, don't take that as a final answer. Keep going.
Yep.
Well, you tell them there's aliens involved. Always tell them there's aliens involved.
Well, that probably was his alien story. That probably was the alien story. And then as Larson said, hey, where's the aliens? He's like, yeah, there's no aliens.
No, it's Valentino.
Valentino.
Yeah, Valentino it was.
It was Valentino, yeah.
Hey,
man, you're like on issue 5. Where did the aliens come
Valentino wasn't too interested in just a zombie book, so he's like, oh, what you don't understand is in a few issues, some aliens are going to be behind all this. And he's like, oh, I could get behind that. Just a lie. There were never aliens.
Well, as Brian Polito said, I had asked Brian Polito, or Brian asked me, I don't know, one or the other, and he said, well, what was your plan B if you didn't do this? Remember, Nile? And I was like, we both were like, there was no plan B.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do. There's no plan B.
That's what I asked you guys all that. I asked you, Jimmy, and Brian. You guys were like, there was nothing else. We had nothing else planned.
You have to be fearless. It's a small industry, but it's a competitive one, isn't it?
It's entertainment, right? Like with anything, it's like you got to go in. You have to go in hard. If you want to be an actor, a singer, a comic book artist, or a writer, I mean, you are an entertainer. It just depends on where you're classified, but it's all the same. You know, there's a very small percentage of people that are going to get famous or have even the 15 minutes. So you have to be relentless if you really want it.
One of the most frustrating things in my life is that I just happen to have a lot of successful friends. One of them is Ken Jeong, who was a doctor, very successful, but he wanted to be an actor. And anybody that's got like a full-time career as a doctor, you'd think that would be enough. But he basically never said no, and he kept going. And eventually stuff like The Hangover started happening and Community. And it's like the thing I see in common in entertainment, to your point, Nile, it's that they just keep persevering.
Mm-hmm. That's true. You know, that's why, you know, people work day jobs and spend their nights trying to fulfill things. And, you know, sleep is a luxury at that point.
I edit until like 4 a.m. in the morning sometimes just to get the episode out, because that's the only time I have. I have a full-time job normally. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I come home and it's like, if I want to get this done, it just means that I'm going to have to sacrifice some sleep. And you know, I'm just lucky enough that I don't also maybe have like a kid on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it harder.
Like when somebody has to imagine pulls me away.
Try twins.
Imagine once you get 20% of your Patreon followers to put $1 each on Patreon.
I'd be a wealthy man if 20% did it.
So just to think what this man can get done, folks, what he's already accomplishing, plus working 10 hours a day on his other job. Let's get him away from that. Not that it's a bad job; it's a good job, but the world needs more.
I would love to
comic
do this.
tropes.
I've got plenty of ideas for comics.
No, you know what's great about your channel, Chris, is the fact that you have your opinions are educated. It's not like necessarily just kind of like shooting off the hip. You do your research and you can tell on how it's a very intelligent presentation you give. It's entertaining. And you speak the truth about things, and it's all based on the observations that you're seeing. It's not like you have, you know, any bad blood towards one person. You're literally focusing everything on the actual work of art that's in front of you. Like if it's this phone, you're talking about this phone, like it's nothing personal, but hey, this camera lens just doesn't make sense or something. You know what I'm saying? So it's the way you present everything is entertaining. It's you know, it's an educational experience. And really, even if something comes off as negative, it's really not, because it's a criticism of something that you're giving them.
Yeah.
You're giving the audience, but it makes you think a little bit though, you know, and it doesn't make you think bad. What I'm trying to say is it doesn't make you think bad about the creator. It almost lets you understand the creator better, because then the way you tie everything back around turns into a positive review.
Well, that's really kind of you to say, first of all, Nile, and that's definitely something that I aim for. All I can say is, you know, when it comes to sort of analyzing or critiquing, it's always done from my perspective, in the sense of like what's done right or what's done wrong. Mm-hmm. Again, it's my opinion, so maybe I'm wrong, but it's not a judgment. I don't think anybody out there starts a creative project going like, I'm just going to hack this out. Like anybody that like gets something printed, I respect that much, at least, because I don't think that anybody's trying to put out a bad product. Sometimes, ironically, it does end up bad, but I don't blame them. Like, you know, it's just like we can still learn from it, even if it is bad.
Yeah. Well, someone's vision is, you know, maybe it's hindsight after the fact. It's printed and now all the readers are getting it. It's like, oh, you know what? Maybe that wasn't really a good idea. Or maybe that wasn't the best artist to have on this book or something like that, or the design. But I mean, what's nice is you do the research though to back it up, you know. So a lot of other YouTube shows I've seen where they review things, some of the stuff I like almost have to fact check. I like with your show that I've seen enough of it where I realize like you don't really have to do that because you've done it already on a lot of stuff.
I appreciate that. But I will say, I know that every once in a while I do get it wrong. And I certainly, I know one thing I do wrong, pronounce names. Because honestly, like, I just read this stuff. Sometimes I don't know how to pronounce a name. I think I do, but I don't.
Oh, I do that all. Dude, I do that live.
Yeah.
Hey, Anthony Marks, how you doing? It's Marquez. Okay, Marks, it's Marks. That's easier.
You're like, hey. And now, Chris, have you gotten any reaction from the pros you might have done a show on? Like, have you been contacted by them, or like I can just imagine if someone doesn't like what you're covering them, or if someone does like, do they?
Yeah, honestly, I've been lucky. Mostly it's all been positive. I know that, like, let's see, Brian Bolland, Tony Isabella, they gave like, not to me directly, but people pointed out, hey, this person saw your thing. They posted on their blog or Facebook or whatever that they saw it, and they thought it was pretty fair, or at least accurate. Gail Simone, I've had some, and I like that. I don't try to just butter somebody up.
Yeah.
In terms of like negative, I know that like at one point Rob Liefeld did block me on Twitter, but at some point he unblocked me. So I'm gonna and I don't think he knows who I am, because he did let me take a picture at whatever the last convention I went to was. Like, hey Rob, take a picture? Sure. No ill will from my part, anyway. Mostly, I've had good luck with people at least saying, like, I disagree with them a little bit on this or that, but overall that's accurate. Good
for you.
I'm not trying to bash anybody, but I will try to be honest with my opinions.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard.
Yeah,
it is hard. Yeah, especially when you're doing reviews and stuff, because
not
not everyone's going to
personal.
accept. It's not personal. It's your opinion and review.
It's a small industry.
Mm-hmm.
It's a small industry. So, like, you say something bad about somebody, and somebody else could take offense. You can burn bridges that way. But right now, I'm not a full-time pro. I'm a full-time critic or a reviewer.
Mm-hmm.
And so all I can do is be honest with my opinions and hope for the best.
Now, do you get I have a question. Do you get a lot of books sent to you? Like, do people want, hey, review this, or do things like that?
I get a lot of solicitation. Like, I would say every single day I get several offers to, like, review a book or something. And I have to tell them, like, I wish you every success, but that's really not exactly what I do with my show. It's not just to review anything. It's to try to review things where I can tell somebody what you can learn from this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then we got a brand new book.
Okay. Now we've got a question from Hirenber. Question for Chris. Would you do an episode on Adam Warren's Empowered? He has 11 TPBs. And
I get asked stuff like this every single day, and it's like, absolutely, I would consider it. I've read a bunch of Empowered. I think Adam Warren's a very impressive artist. I don't think that there's too many guys that sort of draw in such an obviously manga-inspired style.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely something interesting there to see, like, an American just flat out going for that style. I think that there's definitely something there. I would definitely consider that.
Mm-hmm. There you have it. He'll consider it. He's lying.
There you go.
He's lying.
Man, I don't lie.
Hey, so let me ask you a question, if you don't mind. What do you think of the state or the comics industry as it is today?
Good question, Nile.
That's an interesting question.
Do you like what's being published out there?
I would say that, like, honestly, just looking at, like, the sales or something, it's not amazing. But honestly, there's a lot to be hopeful for. I do see, I read carefully the overall sales figures for comics, and over the last decade or so, like, it has been climbing in a lot of areas, compared to, at least, to other books, just books. If you look at, like, Barnes and Noble's, like, sales numbers and stuff, like, comics is a big chunk of that. I think that there are, comics to me isn't just American comics. And I see the Japanese and the European industries and the South American industries as pretty healthy. Do I think, like, mainstream comics like Marvel and DC are doing great? Overall, not necessarily. They don't seem to be connecting to every fan. but I see them at least trying new things, trying to reach new audiences. What I think they need to do is also try to reach those new audiences through distribution, not just through the stories.
Mm.
So there's a business aspect of it that I don't think is getting addressed very well. I think that there's a lot that could be done in terms of printing cheaper comics on like newsprint, and then like if it sells well, selling that in like, you know, a premium edition as a trade paperback.
Mm-hmm.
I think that digital comics have a lot of room to potentially grow. We'll see if what's happening right now helps there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of opinions that I have, honestly. I could talk your ear off in terms of what I think is being done right and wrong. Doesn't mean that I'm right.
Yeah.
I see a lot of reason to be hopeful. And I would say that overall, I think comics in general is never going to go anywhere. Do I think Marvel or DC could, like, you know, potentially someday just disappear? Honestly, either of them could disappear in a heartbeat, and their parent company would not feel a thing. Let's just make that clear.
Yeah.
Like
it's a tax write-off
for DC especially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If DC like disappeared tomorrow, they wouldn't feel anything. Business as usual for the conglomerate or whatever it's called. But on the other hand, it ain't hurting them, and it gives them potential IP. So there's a lot like that could work there. And I don't think that intellectual property will go anywhere. And I don't think those creators will go anywhere. So even if like Warner Brothers shut it down tomorrow, those characters are going to end up somewhere, and those creators are going to end up somewhere.
Mm.
Yeah. That's all I can say.
Well, we'd love to have you on. I'd love to see where we are in a month or so. And I mean, you know, and maybe come back,
tonight, guys.
You know, and maybe get a nice round table, Nile. Get a couple of people, maybe. And
it's, you know, it is funny. I mean, you probably have multiple episodes on this topic. I mean, you can go from the business aspect of like Hierenberg saying, you know, with like the distribution. Remember the good old days when I could go into a pharmacy, my mom can, you know, I'll hang out by the comics when my mom went and picked up a prescription or something, you know, and I walked out with a couple comic books or, you know, other stores. I mean, it'd be great to have that again for kids. I think it's a great way to reach your audience.
It's the way a lot of us discovered comics, but I think that there are young people still reading what I would call comics, and a lot of times it's more it's things like manga, or, you know, somebody like Raina Telgemeier, her books are in like Target and Walmart, and they outsell.
Oh yeah,
everything.
Oh yeah, she's huge on Kickstarter, right?
And she's not the only.
She is huge.
Yeah,
she's huge on Kickstarter. We actually just connected on social media, so we may have her on soon.
Good. Like those are comics. Those are still comics, and those outsell everything. So comics in general is doing just fine. The superhero stuff, it rises and falls. That's kind of
and the drama. I think the drama helps kind of make people feel that things are in worse, or you know, that the comic industry is worse than it is, because you have these people fighting and this and that and saying they're not getting this or getting that. Some of it is true because we know it's true. You know,
well,
by the sources. About that
yesterday, I'm like, the world is burning, and comic pros are going at each other. And I did a little thing about Churchill and Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah,
and they were friends, lifelong friends, and they could be either on either end of the spectrum, artistically, politically, morally, everything. And they had this great mutual respect for one another, and you know, and loved each other. You know, and you just wonder like.
I hope that comics can get back to that someday, but I honestly think that, you know, over the last 20 years, we've evolved into a new world where social media has made our voices louder than they used to be, and it's pushed people to extremes. But I do think in general, the average person falls a little more towards the middle. They just sometimes feel more extreme one way or the other about a certain issue. But I think that, like, I don't know. I guess I believe in the goodness of humanity and that we share a lot of stuff in common. And I believe that storytelling brings us together. I think that comics is storytelling. There's other forms of storytelling that are massively successful. TV and movies are still massively successful.
Video games are huge.
Yeah.
It's all
storytelling.
And it's all finding something true about the human condition that we can all relate to. And I think that comics can do that.
Yeah. I mean, it just sucks because of social media. People will say things now and they'll fire it off in a tweet or something that they would never say to someone's face. You know,
exactly right. Exactly right. And there's like a perception. There's a perception that that's really loud, but their dollar goes as far as my dollar, as far as your dollar, as far as your dollar. It's all the same at on that level.
Yeah.
What's this? And we'll get you going because we have you on for an hour and a half already. But get Swifty.
Oh yeah. It says, what are your thoughts on Bad Idea Selling Without Diamond? Their book that is coming out is called ENIAC.
Well, I'll be honest. I'm not super familiar. Do either of you guys know what?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
I'm familiar with Bad Idea, and I have heard about how they're publishing, producing stuff. I personally have not actually even dived into their books yet, which is on my to-do list, which I need to because.
No, let's have the Bad Idea chaps on.
But I can say this: like, I am seeing so many new publishers emerge right now that excite me. I'm seeing stuff from Vault and Scout and TKO, and like they're making names for themselves. There's a lot of publishers out there. There's a lot of people self-publishing and crowdfunding. I think in general there are some fantastic titles out there, even in the mainstream. I think that stuff like Immortal Hulk is one of the best comics out there, and that's like just a Marvel superhero book. But I think it's amazing. It's a great time to be reading comics. It is.
It really is. So we'll be all right.
There's stuff that will be all right. And, there's stuff for everybody out there. Like I'll be, there's certain story arcs and things I don't like. I don't like certain things they've done to the characters I grew up with. But the problem is, it's not going to last because then they just change it again. It's like, all right, we'll go 4 issues.
You get old enough to realize that the status quo gets reset every several years.
Yeah,
it becomes less of a big deal.
I'm a DC guy. I grew up DC. It's just how I was. I fell in love with Batman, and then from Batman, actually, I fell in love with Superman because I actually had a prototype Kenner Superman action figure. Because my dad was a contractor, and one of his customers was a guy in Fairfield County, Connecticut here, and he worked for Kenner, and he worked in their kind of basically like toy concepts and things. And he goes, here, give these dolly things to your daughters and give this Bat Cycle with this Batman figure and the Superman action figure. He said that they were approved and that they're going to actually be in stores soon. So I actually have a prototype of that Kenner Superman for the superpowers Superman.
Yeah.
So that got me. So that also led to my love for DC. And then I got into Batman comics. Batman Shadow of the Bat was real big for me. I have every issue. And then, of course, Bruce Timm's Batman the Animated Series really got me into that, which still holds up to this day. That series. I love it.
Well, did you guys see that? Like, he's going to continue it in comics form.
Yes, and I'm trying. I reached out to Ty Templeton, and I'm going to say it in case he's watching. I know you read my message, Ty. Now respond.
Well, Nile, if you're a good person, you're going to take that prototype Superman figure, you're going to sell it on eBay, and put Billy's kid through college. Come on, be a good person. Do the right thing.
Yeah.
Do the right thing.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do that for you, Billy.
Thank you, Nile.
I'll put him through the finest community college.
Why, yes, by the finest community college in all of the great state of Connecticut.
There you go. But no, I'm a DC guy. So it's kind of sad with what's going on, but I know it'll get there. We'll get back to normal.
We'll be fine.
I've got back issues, and I like Greg Capullo and Scott Snyder. Their stuff isn't too bad.
Well, guys, look, like we're all quarantined, right? And there's not many new comics coming out, if any. But there's so many great back issues out there. All I can say is, like, my show talks about all sorts of really interesting back issues. Maybe you'll find one that you like, and maybe you can reach out to your local comic shop and see if they can do curbside delivery. Mm-hmm. If not, there's always stuff like eBay and Amazon. But there's a lot of great back issues out there. This industry has been around for a long, long time. There's a lot of great comics to read. Yeah. Some people like She.
What's that?
Some people like She. It's a really obscure indie comic.
It is obscure.
Some people like it.
It made me realize I love the female form when I opened that front cover of the naked lady.
She's a mom now, so the story is.
Dude, MILFs are in, bro. MILFs are in.
Oh, jeez.
You're gonna have to give a subtitle. She MILF.
Yeah.
Nice.
Billy Two Cheese.
You can't spell she without. Well, we can't spell MILF without she, or maybe MILFs without she.
I don't know.
I don't think that's.
I don't think that. I think that's red
Maybe
wine.
you're using.
Oh, there's no H in MILF. Oh, whatever. All right.
Speaking of back issues, I mean, you do have, the origin of comic books, the Platinum Age.
Oh yeah, dude. That's the thing. There's so much about comics that never gets discussed. And people before the Platinum Age, there's technically the Victorian Age, which I reference obliquely in there.
Shilf.
Blevins
got it. Blevins got it.
Nice. But yeah, that was a lot of fun to talk about. Like before there were superheroes, there were still comics and comic books, and it was really fun to delve into that history. When I made that episode, did I think that was going to be like my most watched episode ever? Absolutely not. But what can I say? Sometimes I make episodes that are more for myself.
Yeah.
And I make episodes for people that just love comics. I try to build the audience that I want to have.
Mm-hmm. I actually know someone who has that book.
Well, you're doing a great job at it. A great job.
It's a CGC 1.5 too.
Really?
Yeah.
Mob Seed, I did not see the she figure link you sent me on Twitter. I'll check it. Sorry, my friend.
All right.
Sorry about that, Chris.
No,
but
anyway,
awesome. Chris, this has been wonderful.
This live, and that you have a dedicated audience that's here asking you questions. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's a fun show to do. I mean, certain, like I said, especially now with like the whole quarantine. I mean, everyone's doing so many more shows, but we're just all doing it. I catch shows when I can now because there's so many. We're almost going like every night. We usually try to do 2 or 3 nights a week because we do it live. And it's all on the fly. And it's just a hangout spot. We encourage people, crack open a beer, do whatever. If they super chat us, that's great. That's a little bit of funds we get. It goes right back into the show. We save it up for new equipment or software or something.
I'm the same way. Way. And I'll tell you, I used to do more live streams on Comic Tropes. I would especially do a live stream every October for Inktober. I would live stream every single day, draw something. Not great, but just try. I'm just trying. Yeah. This last one, my channel got to a certain point where it's, has a certain number of views that like YouTube can expect in its algorithm for any given episode. But all of a sudden I was doing an episode every day. And obviously a significantly smaller portion was watching live.
Yeah.
And it hurt me. It hurt me big time because all of a sudden YouTube stopped sharing my videos because they said like, oh, this guy used to get maybe 50,000 views for an episode. All of a sudden he's only getting maybe 2,000 or 3,000 views for an episode. Something must have changed. His audience must not be as interested. So I don't do live streams on my channel anymore. I created a second channel if I feel like doing like a live stream because it's so frustrating. You get to a certain point and you have to start following how the YouTube algorithm works.
Oh.
You want to just do whatever you want to do here, but you almost can't, or it'll start penalizing you.
So if you want to grow your channel, you got to play the algorithm game.
You do at a certain point. So
we need to start doing just recorded interviews.
Mm-hmm. At a certain point, like you guys will keep growing. You guys will keep growing with this channel. At a certain point, the amount that watches it live will probably be smaller than how many watch it overall within that first week. Yeah. And YouTube may stop sharing it as much.
Oh, okay. Well, now that's something to think of.
It is something to think of.
I don't know what the solution is. It's just you'll have to and YouTube changes its algorithm. So you have to
maybe we can try it for next month or something. We love our friends though, like all of our
I do too.
Our cast members, we call them, but
I love
we do this for fun anyway, but
good.
We'll think now. We'll have let's have a crowdfunding.
We get new subscribers every day, even if it's just one. It's one, but I mean, we're constant. It's a nice little steady pace. I mean, we just broke over 2,200. We had our 1 year anniversary on March 22nd. So I mean, 1 year, 2,200. subscribers. I look at most of the math of everyone. Our growth is pretty steady. So
yeah, and we try to be positive. So that's another thing.
That's another thing too. We're not a negative show, so I'm sure if we did talk shit about a lot of people and had people on and just belittled people, I'm sure we would freaking be killing it. But that's not what we're about, you know
what? You'd have short-term good returns.
Exactly.
And then, of course, you're alienating people. So, like, long-term, you have less options.
Yeah.
There's a lot better people that are better at being
we just don't have a mean bone in our body, Billy. That's what it is.
There's not a mean bone in my
There's
body.
not a mean bone in my body, and I don't care what you say. Don't make me say it, Billy.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Sure.
Maybe you've talked about this on the show before. How did you two meet?
First of all, that was great. Well,
we're actually...
Nile, you this way. Nile, am I pointing to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Billy.
Yeah, Nile, how did we meet?
How did we meet Billy? Just like all the fans met Billy. I gave him all my money and I was suckered into buying some comic books. And I asked for a refund and he said no. So then he took me out to dinner and that's how we became friends.
See?
That's awesome.
No, I met Billy. The first time I met Billy, I mean, I knew of She and stuff. I had the books. And Frank, my brother-in-law, Frank Amazing, as they know him on the show, another one of our producer, he handles all the scheduling and everything. But he was like, hey, Billy Tucci's going to be in Connecticut. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm like, where at? And he said, was it Heroes? Legends?
Yeah.
Legends. So, and that was like back in 2014 or 15 for Free Comic Book Day.
Yes.
So I met Billy there. He did a She cover. We had one of the sketch covers from before sketch covers were cool.
Yeah.
We had that one. I think, what was it? When did you do that sketch cover?
I did the first one. Well, actually, Gen 13 did the first one. Theirs came out a few months before mine, but I didn't know they were doing theirs. But Scott Campbell showed me Gen 13, number 13, had in 97, I think it was, had a blank cover. Yeah. I did mine in 1997 for the 98 tour book, and it came out in the fall of 97. Yes.
Yeah.
So the worst paper ever to draw on. They're out there. But Chris, it's the worst thing to draw on because it was just a regular cover.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it was horrible,
so
smooth and slick.
Oh, it's terrible. It's just terrible. But
yeah, when I showed you that book that my friend did, he printed it on a different type of paper now, so you can actually draw on it.
Yep. We didn't think that. We're like, oh, let's just do a cover, and I'm like, oh my god, and smearing everyone's art and everyone's covers and stuff. I'm like, that's okay. I'll just Vince Coletta this and make it all black. No, but then we met, and then how we met.
Well, then we did. So that's when I first met Billy. Then I saw him at a couple more shows, and we started getting to know each other. But it was like one of those things, I see him at a show. Like, oh yeah, Nile, blah blah blah, and we weren't really, it was just more of acquaintance things. Hey, how you doing? Buy a couple things, whatever, chit chat. And then I had my show on Facebook, Comic Cabana Live Auction Show, and I was doing comic book auctions. I was partnered with my local comic shop, and we would go on Facebook and we would do comic book auctions, but I preferred to do voices in mine was like a freaking sketch comedy show. So half the time people are like, all right, switch the book. And I'm like, and it was fun. But anyways, he did his first Kickstarting campaign. So, I reached out and said, hey, do you mind if I advertise on our show? And that's basically how it all started. Then me and Billy started talking and just had a lot of shit in common and started hanging out. And then, the show started because I went to just hang out with him down in Long Island at for Zombie Sama, and I also did the videos and stuff for his campaigns, and I do his other media and things for his campaigns. So we were just talking at a Starbucks, and I told him, hey, I'm going to go on Mondays, and I'm going to just go on through OBS. I'm going to go on Kickstarter, and I'm just going to see if people want to scroll through and explore with me. And it blew up into this show. And, now I've been doing it over a year.
And I'm like, oh, my God, can I do that with you? Because now I was like, I want to review Kickstarters and Indiegogos. And I'm like, oh, my God, that's a great idea. Let's do a show. We'll call it Crowdfunding Comics. We'll do it together and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So it went from just looking at stuff to, hey, let's just bring these creators on. Let's give them an outlet because, Billy's background is indie comics. And back then even like the Image guys, whatever people's opinions are of them, they did something that was just pretty damn crazy and it was successful.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
People are trying to do what they did for like, almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And they made it happen.
They made it happen. They did the right place, right time, right people. The opportunity was there to do it, to break the norm. Nowadays you can't really, I don't know if it can really be done again. Maybe, who knows? You never know. But crowdfunding is where it's at. I mean, you can be a serious creator making a serious living, and you don't need a multi-million fan base. You only need a few thousand fan base, and you'll be more successful, creative wise, financially, everything, than those big names that are working out there.
Well, look at EVS has, I think, 3,000 support backers so far on his Cyberfrog book, and he's over 400,000. So you get
it's one book.
3,000 fans. If you can get 3,000 people to support you, you can make a heck of a living.
And look at Brian Pulido.
A bunch of great comics a year.
Brian Pulido has his whole, Coffin Comics. I mean, and what they're doing is think of it like, I look at it like almost like boutique comics in a way, because what a lot of these big creators are doing is they're making it an immersive experience. Not only are you becoming part of the success, not only are you having access to me through social media, but now, you follow Brian Pulido's method. It's like, hey, want to hang out with me for the weekend? Like, let's have a Coffin Con, and it's strictly a convention for the people that participate on books, the artists, the writers. He has some other creators there, but they've usually participated in some way, but they're there, they can promote their own stuff. And you can spend 3 days with the Coffin Comics crew. So it's not like you're just supporting them. You are a part of the team now.
Yeah.
And it's a very immersive thing. And honestly, crowdfunding, actually, if you look at statistics and sales wise, I think like Kickstarter is like technically like what I think it's like a top publisher or something for comics. Like
I'd say so. I think Indiegogo might even be bigger than Kickstarter now, right?
Nah, Kickstarter's still bigger, surprisingly. Okay. Yeah. But published, like if you looked at numbers wise, they're more than Marvel or DC.
Oh, number of projects.
Well, just the money and everything, yeah. So they're actually a top publisher.
I'd love to hear you guys ask this of like future creators that use that as whether they feel any responsibility for like taking care of these people that are almost like their producers now. Like are they like what kind of responsibility they feel for not just creating the product, but just keeping in touch with them and stuff. Like what kind of like level of connection do they feel the obligation for? I'd be very curious about.
Well, you know what the obligation is? The obligation is to give them a good product, and what it is how far they want to go is however they can do it. Now, for you or me starting off, we did our campaign. You're going to start off, your expectations have to be low. Hopefully you make a few $1,000s to do it. And the money's really just going to go towards your next book. But as you grow with popularity and, guys that are doing this, that are hitting huge figures are also guys more than not, they are professionals. At some point they were big in the industry. Yeah. Big name in the industry. So they do have that. But what you're seeing now is the guys that stick with it, who, look for a $500 goal and make $3,000. Then the next one, they go for a $1,500 goal, they make $15,000. Yeah. And they keep growing and they keep growing. So what they do is they really do start to think of these supporters and investors as part of the team. And what they'll do is they'll reach out to them. Hey, what do you think of this? Hey, what do you think of that? Hey, you know what? I'm going to select, the first 50 responders are going to be my beta readers, and they do all these things and they really make them a part of it. So it's just a great way that you're not just getting a book that's really custom and only so many of you are going to have it, but it's also a way of becoming part of that creator's team. Now, some don't. They just create out a product. They do good stuff.
Because you're accountable too. Getting your books out. Because it's a direct connection to fandom, and it's pretty cool. And even the promotion, Chris, you talked about promotion and staying in touch. That's a full-time job. It really is. Yeah. You're going to be wearing so many hats, and that's just tell you like your buddy who did his crowdfunded book. Do it, and it's a full-time job. You got to be out there promoting. You've got to be. Because, and the funny thing is when the promotion department is working, the art department's not, you know what I mean? Because you're doing this, you're promoting, and then when the art department's not working because the shipping department is working. So, but you've got to juggle all that.
We've got a unique opportunity here, Billy, because you have done both self-publishing and crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and mainstream. I've worked
in mainstream.
Of course.
Yeah.
When you did the self-publishing, you were basically what, like convincing Diamond and then the retailers to buy your book, and now you're convincing individuals.
Yes.
What do you think takes more of your time to convince? Like for that?
I definitely think convincing the individual, because again, they hold you accountable. They'll ask you questions on your Indiegogo, on your comment section, and you've got to answer them. So you're dealing directly with the fans. But on the other hand, what's cool about that, when I was self-publishing and I go through Diamond, I will get 40% of that cover price, because Diamond takes 20 and the retailers take 20. Rightly so, right? They do work. When I'm dealing directly with the fans, you're getting 100% of the cover price, and then your cost. Because if back in the day, say we're doing a book that's $2.99, roughly you're getting about $1.10 a book, say, from Diamond per book. Okay. But then you have to print that book. You got to pay your art staff. You got to pay your, you know what I mean? All those costs to make all the production costs, all that. So the advertising you have to pay for, all that comes out of it. So this is a way, again, you have something like EVS or Brian Pulido, and these guys, you know, look at Doug. Doug made $800,000 off of his book, but they're on every single day. If you know Brian's on every day. Ethan has his YouTube channel every day. I think he's on now. And you just engage those fans and you talk about comics, you talk about your product. You know, Richard doing the Expendables, and now we've got Richard Meyer did the Expendables comic, licensed it from
Sylvester
Stallone. You know, now it's reaching even they're seeing that. Hollywood's seeing it, and it's kind of cool that people are reaching out to it. You said that woman that you had mentioned, the one that she's everywhere now, and she's huge on Kickstarter.
Well, Kevin Eastman crowdfunds. Yeah. I mean, Drawing Blood did great. I mean, he's hitting six figures with his stuff. I think
I love it. I just love it. I feel so invigorated when you're talking to people individually, the fans. It's so great because you're interacting with these people and you get to know them. And I'd much rather have 2,500, 3,000 people that know my product and want it, as opposed to say 10,000 and maybe half of them are buying because they think it might be worth money or something, or the speculators.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that.
It's a really, really, and it's life changing. I got to tell you, it's totally reinvigorated my love for the medium, because I think dealing with DC, and as I was saying, that Darwin said to me, and he's like, they'll break your heart. You know, because you throw so much, you pour so much into these pitches. You talk about Rick Remender is posting his pitches. You know, he spent 3 weeks a month on a pitch, say, working it out or so. It gets to the stage that I would pitch a new Sergeant Rock miniseries, and then like, okay, give us a 6-issue breakdown, but it's got to be 2 pages each. So then you're spending 2-3 weeks breaking down every issue, so you can then say, well, here's issue 1, here's issue 2, here's issue 3, issue 4. And then someone say, nah, that's all right. We're not going to do that.
And I definitely wouldn't want to put any words in Rick's mouth, but he'd be somebody interesting to talk to, because, you know, at a certain point, he started with self-published comics, did some indie stuff, got up to Marvel, was doing, Avengers and X-Men and all that stuff. And then he was like, you know what? I'd rather do my own stuff and own 100%. But instead of crowdfunding, he did Image. And I'd be curious, for everybody, what the amount of work for marketing is worth to them, because there's a lot of different routes to go if you want to sort of control your own product.
This is what
there at least is a bunch of different routes to go.
Yeah. I would say this. I think you're going to see a lot of pros going to crowdfunding. I think a lot of them, once they get their IPs back for any characters that they've created, whatever arrangements they had, they are going to crowdfunding with those books. And what they're doing is they're starting off with like creating omnibuses and things and going, getting their stuff back out there again, getting it published again to new audiences, old audiences. Because look, it's the entertainment industry, right? There's flavors of the week, okay? And depending on your social, political, whatever's going on, right? Because this is just how it's always been, that's what they're going to produce. They're going to produce what is socially safe to produce. They don't really take too many chances anymore. So you're going to get different artists and writers in. So it's just a constant revolving door. You're going to have those big names that will always have a spot. But majority of these people that are working on books, they're only on for so long. And then they're gone and someone else takes over and then they move on to here or there. So a lot of them are moving into crowdfunding because they've had the taste of the mainstream. They don't have all the freedoms they want. So now they take their characters over to Kickstarter or Indiegogo. There's actually some other sites too. Some even use Patreon. Very few use Patreon to just do direct sales.
Patreon's great. Patreon's really, they don't take too much.
No, they don't. Yep.
And, it is interesting seeing crowdfunding develop as a new legitimate way to publish comics. It is interesting to follow this. I'm learning a lot from it. So I appreciate you guys sharing this tonight. Like, obviously I'm just gathering information for like potential future episodes at this point, but I'm going to monetize.
Well, it's also cool. You can even do the modern day underground comics. I mean, that's what this crowdfunding is, because all you need, say you need $1,000 just to print your book. And then you go to 50, 100 of your friends and family and can you give me $10? Can you give me $20? And the next thing you know, you have enough money to fund your own books. And there's also this great outlaw, Brian Polito and I always talk to, we're outlaws, you know what I mean? This outlaw mentality, fly the pirate flag and you do what you want. Look at your buddy, Death in Comics. What if he came and said, hey, I want to do Death in Comics to, Marvel? Like, Death in Comics, I think that's kind of negative. Yeah, we're going to pass on that. You're not, now he's doing his own. He's like, Death in Comics. And I'm like, Death in Comics, that's an awesome
I feel like that there's still like, potentially still like an advantage to going with, say, Image, Boom, Dynamite, whatever it might be, that allows you to do your creative stuff just because they also potentially have the reach and connections to license the intellectual property.
Yeah.
That's when crowdfunded comics, I think, will truly explode, is when somebody out there is able to convert their crowdfunded comic into either, a Netflix show or, a Sony movie or something like that. That's when people will really wake up and see if that's, the way to go.
Correct. Well, there's a lot of creators out there right now that are in that process.
Sure.
That they're in talks with, producers and things like that. But there's one aspect, though, that you also need to know, too, is there's a really cool thing about the crowdfunding community. And whether you're a diehard Kickstarter or a diehard Indiegogo, we know how things work. Or the people in the middle that will just support anything as long as they like it. There is actually creator support. Okay. So you may even have your own campaign going, but you help support your fellow creators. Everyone just kind of shares people's stuff. Obviously your priority is your product, your campaign, but at the same time, tweets are being sent, social media is being shared. Hey, check out, I might have my comic going, you may have your comic going, this and that. Well, a couple times a week I might say, hey guys, check out, Chris's new book, blah, blah, blah. And then the next day I'm like, hey, make sure, you check out this. And what they do too is they'll help out too, because on my Kickstarter, I can send out to all my past bidders, hey, Billy Tucci's got a new book launching next Monday. Everyone check it out and support him. So like, it's not like you're competing, but you're supporting. Like it's a really interesting community.
Well, it is definitely a new frontier. So you guys have definitely carved out a niche talking about this. And it's something that I'm definitely curious about. And you've helped educate me a bit tonight.
Well, you know how to reach us if you have questions or want to talk about something in more detail too.
But here's the cool thing too with that, Chris. Once you successfully crowdfund a book and you fulfill that campaign, that book is done. Now you can take that book to Image, to Boom, and say, book's already done. It doesn't cost you a dime. Everything is done. Here's 4 issues. Here's 100 pages. You could break our 100-page graphic novel down into 4 issues. Here's your 4 first issues already. They've got nothing to lose. And then if you want to go to another publisher with that, but as people are talking about, there are now people in Hollywood, in the video game industry, maybe not so much video games, but Netflix shows that they do have their finger on the pulse and seeing what's going on, because there have been so many successful crowdfunding campaigns.
Right.
So.
And you see that sometimes in entertainment too. I remember back in the day, Veronica Mars had a successfully crowdfunded movie. Eventually, she got more episodes of a TV show. I guess I feel like in crowdfunding, there seems to be two ways that it happens. One is that somebody with a name comes in and says, I want to do my own thing. Already has fans. They're supporting it. Yeah. Then there's other people that can get attention with a good idea, but then I worry that they're somewhat beholden to the fans that they accumulate. And I feel like that must be a tricky road to walk or line to maneuver.
Well, it's a gamble.
Yeah,
it is a gamble. I mean, you're putting yourself out there. You're putting your project out there. You're putting your project out there there's a minimum requirement. Okay, your project has to be at a certain phase of development before Kickstarter, Indiegogo will approve it, because they need to prove. You need to prove that you have a product. And then at that point, you've got 2 ways. There's guys that already have the books done, and they'll promote that. Hey, the book's already done. Once the campaign is done, we head to print, we head to this, your stretch goals, you get all your tchotchkes and all that stuff, and you're good to go. And there's other guys that need that money to come in, and then they need, a few months after to get everything wrapped up.
Yeah.
And that's why you have people that look at Indiegogo or Kickstarter, because you can do it away with Indiegogo, where once a bidder comes in, the money's already sent to you. You already have it.
Yeah.
And you can just have that money come in. And if you're a good business person, you're going to funnel that into the project and this and that. You're not going to go get a bunch in and then go buy your new PlayStation or your new computer or, get your new kitchen countertop.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
Because unfortunately that is the gamble. There are people that have done bad things.
We've had that conversation.
My whole background, I think I said before I got into selling cars several years ago, my whole background was in marketing, and I worked at big companies, white collar job, and my job was just all breaking down data and stuff like that. I'd be so curious to see whether between the different platforms, Indiegogo, Kickstarter, whatever else, what kind of success rate they have, not only in reaching their goal, but in fulfilling that goal. I'd be very curious to see if one platform has a better success rate than another.
Well, all my Indiegogos have been fulfilled, except for the ones I recently done.
That's awesome.
I've got a couple of Kickstarters that are about 4 years old. I'm still waiting. I don't know if I'll ever see those books.
I think what's that website? I think Indiegogo has more fulfilled books than Kickstarter, but the caveat is that Kickstarter has substantially more books. So it depends on the platform. But
that data deserves a deep dive. I'm serious. That data deserves a deep dive to see what works and what doesn't.
Well, we have, one of the new features for our 2020, we're not rebranding, but we're restructuring how we do shows and do things. So different days we have different shows, and on Mondays it's going to be kind of we still have to come up with the right name for it, but it's almost like the weekend box office reviews. We're going to go to the sites that have it, like Backer Kit, things like that, look at the statistics of who's at what, where they're expected to be, and just kind of recap hey, here's the top 5, or here's our top 5 or top 10. This is where they're at. Look at this. We'll look at books hey, this book's doing great. It's awesome.
That's a great idea.
Hey, this book's not doing too well, but in our opinion, it's a great book. It's got a great story arc, it's got great character design.
What's that popular YouTube channel? I want to say Kick Scammers. I think it's Larry Bundy or something. Just talks about Kickstarters in general, which ones fulfilled and which ones don't.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not comics specifically, just anything. Very popular channel, I believe. And that would be, but I think that would be tremendously interesting to your viewers specifically if you were able to give them breakdowns on how successful each thing is.
Yeah, the
I
box
really
office
think your audience
returns.
would be super plugged in.
This weekend's box office returns on crowdfunding, and then we'll say like, oh man, this book's bombing. All the hype.
I think that your audience would be really plugged into something
and
like
call
that.
it out. We might, it might
be our only that might be our only enter into like some negativity because you're gonna fall into like, hey, this big name, why is this book tanking?
It's facts. I would just I would sincerely say that if one of your producers had extra time or something to sort of just put together like weekly summaries, I think you guys could have a lot of success.
That's a great idea. And it's just the facts, Nile. We don't have any,
no judgment.
Back this book. This has been doing
successful. This has been fulfilled, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this book's going to make it. I hope
That's a small niche that you guys could fulfill that no one else is positioned to fulfill right now.
Yeah, well, that is a direction we're going in. We've been trying to get it on some Mondays, but again, like as we've been trying to fulfill commitments to guests. Because the demand gets so high. Yeah. I mean, because we have, look, it might be your first campaign. We'll have you on. We'll have you on for a half hour. Plug your book. Tell us your story. Who are you? I may do 3 or 4 guests in an episode now. Tuesday nights, I might have 3 guests. So it's like you're on at 9, you're on at 9:30. And that's what's great about this platform, which is why we switched over. Because on my screen, you're all lined up in the bottom. I see who's waiting backstage. I pop them in, change the background, do this, do that, move along. And, but now that we're weeding through that and getting into the new schedule and format, Monday we may just have 1 guest and then we're going to talk about what's going on. Or we might just do our show on Mondays for strictly just reviewing what's going on between Kickstarter, Indiegogo, certain creators and stuff like that and see where they're at and what's going on.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, I've been drinking a lot and I've got a new idea for your show title. White Guys with Glasses.
Yeah.
White guys with reflective glasses that are trying not to catch the light in their glasses.
That's what, I try to put my head down.
That's what I'm doing too. You see me doing that move because every time I see the little, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, we all are.
I do too. I'm like, I hate that. I got to get, that's what we need on the team is someone who does lighting. I need them to come here. I got the studio lights and everything, but.
So I got to go pick it up from him. He's got professional lighting for me. He's like, your lighting sucks. I got lighting for you. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, we've had you on for over 2 hours now. You've been tremendous.
Yeah, it's been fun, man.
It's been interesting. I appreciate you guys sharing with me as well as asking me questions about my show.
Well, we love your show. We're fans. So we're amongst the 113,000 or so subscribers you have. Chris, is there anywhere where people, our wrenches have been putting up the links to the show? But are you on Twitter, Instagram, anything, a hashtag that you could share?
On Twitter, C Tropes. On Instagram is Comic Tropes. On Facebook, there's a Comic Tropes page. I mean, I try to have at least a page on pretty much everywhere. So anywhere you look, there should be a Comic Tropes official channel. And I appreciate that. Definitely at this point, like the most people know me right through the YouTube channel. That's what I built first. And so I appreciate that.
And you have a Patreon, right?
I do have a Patreon. So patreon.com/Comic Tropes. There's also a thing called Coffee, ko-fi/Comic Tropes. That's where if you were like, I don't want to do a monthly donation, but hey, I really enjoyed this episode, Chris. I want to give you like a one-time donation. That's what Coffee is for.
That's great.
Nice.
Well, I think you should
start. And we have the links in the description of the show. So I've got your Patreon in there, your YouTube.
That's very kind of you.
Chris, I think you definitely should start taking advertising. You got the numbers for it. And just think, there are ads in the greatest comics of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ed.
So take some ads. Why not?
That name sounds familiar. Is that Duke Share?
Yeah.
Ed.
That's Duke somebody, Share. Right?
Do you guys know each other?
I don't think I know him. That name sounds familiar.
Like a pro?
Maybe.
You gave him a really bad review on
No, I didn't. I'm Googling it. No, you guys have been great. I appreciate the signal boost. It was fun. I have fun talking comics with anybody. So it was definitely a fun time talking comics with you guys tonight.
Well, hopefully the things will get back to normal sooner than later. And we'll see you at a convention. If you're at a convention and I'm there, if you head down San Diego Way or any of the shows, please look us up. We'd love to go out with you.
You know, it's a weird time. Who knows which conventions will be open? The next ones I plan on going, if the world gets things under control, would be New York Comic Con in October and the Brazilian Comic Con in Sao Paulo in December.
Oh, nice. Look at you.
Well, I love
Nile and I would love
travel.
to go down to that Brazilian show, wouldn't we?
I don't have kids, so I try to travel internationally at least once a year.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Chris. Enjoy your drink. Enjoy time with your fiance.
And just so you know, Ed Dukeshire is in the industry. He's a letterer, and he's lettered many of things.
Yeah,
I love lettering. That's why I know Ed Dukeshire. I love lettering.
He's credited in
an episode about lettering.
457 issues.
Wow.
He's a letterer from Raj Studios.
Ed, I know your work. It took me a minute. I know your work, and I appreciate it. A good letterer is somebody that doesn't necessarily draw attention to themselves. Can just help guide you through the comic. I love letterers. I love them.
Nice.
Thank you, fantastic. What a great guest. What a great show, huh, buddy?
Yeah, thanks so much. And, if you don't mind, whenever you have a new episode up, we'll help share it on Twitter, this and that, just let you know.
There's going to be one tonight. On
new episode. So, all right. Thank you so much, Chris. It was a pleasure. You're always welcome on if you ever want to come chat with us. We'd appreciate that. And, again, sir, you have a great night. Stay happy, healthy. I'd say sober, but don't worry about that. And,
too late.
Enjoy the quarantine. And we will see everyone tomorrow night. We have Matt Wagner on.
And don't we have a Roland Man too?
Roland Man is going to be on Thursday.
Okay. Well, Matt Wagner.
Matt Wagner tomorrow night. All right, everyone, have yourselves a great night, and we will see you tomorrow at 9 p.m. with another exciting episode of Crowdfunding Comics.
Thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you all for coming.
Ed, you're fantastic. Good to see you guys. Thank you all. Bye, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks again for tuning into Crowdfunding Comics. We look forward to hanging out with all of our crowdfunding fans every time we go live. And don't forget to click the link below and subscribe to our channel. And there's a little bell. You may want to hit that too. This way you get all the great notifications when we go live and when we upload some awesome content. You want to follow us? Sure, go right ahead at Twitter at CrowdFundComics with an X, Instagram Crowdfunding Comics, and Facebook at Crowdfunding Comics. Till next time, crowdfunding fans, we'll see you soon.